Let's take a couple of minutes and talk about some very useful tools, namely fixtures. A fixture is a semi-permanent device that enables us to position and hold a workpiece in some specialized manner. Now, perhaps we have an odd-shaped piece that we can't grasp securely using normal clamping methods. Or we may have to make multiple pieces that are exactly alike. For these situations, we need to make a fixture. Fixtures range from the automobile industry's giant gang fixtures to ones designed to hold tiny pieces of brass for clockwork gears. It all depends on the operations that we need to perform on our workpiece. For example, on the left is a raw casting which was used in a 17-range gearbox that I designed. On the far right is a completed casting. Now these items in the center are the fixtures that enabled me to accurately reproduce many copies of this part. Let's take a quick look at a couple of them. This first fixture holds the part while allowing me access to the center of the casting. The fixture is centered and then fastened to the mill bed with S-clamps. Then the upper plate is added. Now we can rough center the casting under the spindle. Once this is done, we can tighten the top plate, securely holding that casting in place. Now that it's locked securely, I can drill an accurately placed pilot hole and then follow it by taking the correct size bit and drilling all the way through the part. Then, while the part is still centered, I can use a boring head to enlarge part of that hole to accept the size bearing I wish to use. Here's the final bored casting with a nice step at the bottom to retain that bearing. The next fixture uses a machine spacer that will snugly fit into the bore to center the casting. Now you might notice that the spacer has a small hollowed out section at the top. This will allow precise location using a wiggler. If you don't know how to use a wiggler, don't worry about that. We'll cover that in Volume 2 of this series. With the casting securely on the machine stub, I can now drill and ream a second hole the exact distance I want from the workpiece center. Now these fixtures were invaluable at the time, but since then the gearbox design has changed, and these fixtures are now just scrap metal. There's another way that you can build reusable fixtures that you'll probably find very handy. Rather than have fixtures that become obsolete, you can allow for future changes by using a bed plate. A bed plate can be used for many different fixtures and setups, and only becomes obsolete when it's too drilled up and damaged to use anymore. Now this is a very simple bed plate. It's made from 1/2 inch thick 6066 T6 aluminum scrap. Try to find scrap that's not banged up or warped too much. It's slightly longer than the mill bed itself, hanging off in the front and left sides a bit. Now this can be helpful for larger parts, but you need to be aware of any interference with the mill or anything else in your shop that it might hit. To make sure that it sits squarely on the mill bed, the removable end plate or swarf gate at the left-hand side of the bed has been left off. Let's use an animation to dig a little deeper into the subject. Normally, the bed plate is fastened to the bed by means of 4 T-nuts and Allen head cap screws. To minimize any warping in the plate, and there's going to be some, tighten the aluminum plate onto the cast iron bed the way a mechanic would tighten an aluminum cylinder head onto a cast iron engine block. First, we'll finger tighten all 4 bolts. Then, starting with any corner you desire, tighten one of the bolts about a 1/4 turn. Next, using an X pattern, go to the far opposite corner and tighten that bolt about a 1/4 turn also. Now on that same side, but at the far opposite end, repeat for the 3rd bolt. Finally, staying with that idea of an X pattern, cross over and tighten the last bolt. Repeat this procedure evenly until all the bolts are fully tightened. This should eliminate most of the warpage in the plate and get it as square as possible to the mill bed. The nice thing about a bed plate is you can drill and tap holes anywhere on its surface and use these to attach studs or bolts onto the mill. You aren't limited to where the slots are in the mill bed. So if you're going to be repeating a procedure in the future, those holes will remain where you drilled them, ready for you to bolt the various parts of your fixture in place again. You can build as many different fixtures on that plate as space will allow. For instance, as we mentioned before, a stop block is vital in overcoming rotational forces that the work will be subjected to. But it also has the side benefit of setting the x-axis position of our work precisely. Now if we use an alignment block alongside that stop block, we can set the y-axis position too. These holes aren't going to change place, so every time we bolt these blocks into those holes, the relationship will always be accurate, always the same. Like any other fixture, once these blocks are aligned with the spindle, all we have to do is place our workpiece against them, our setup is done. With a couple of pre-drilled holes for bolts or studs, our clamp blocks too will always be located for maximum holding ability. Now this enables us to set up multiple workpieces precisely and very rapidly. And as we mentioned before, the fixtures don't become obsolete. We just unbolt them and save the pieces for next time, or use them in different positions for different fixtures.